It's pretty amazing that
I worked at Stant when I was in high school, and I did steel wheel though.
Is this like the lockbox that Al Gore was talking about when he was talking about
You've been going over to the northwest too?
Not yet, not yet. I've been to the fort a couple of times, and we're going to be back. We're going to be up in Calumet. We hear there's a professor up there that wants to get started on the community.
Great.
So yeah, it's just now heating up. It's just now getting kicked into gear. We have Hoosier Environmental Council has agreed to carry these petitions around. I want to be clear now, they have not endorsed my campaign, they have not endorsed the Green Party. They have said they believe in the principle of greater choice on election day. But the Indiana Green Party Congress up in the fort, and as I dozed off, and I woke up, and everyone had taken 2 steps back. Do what you can. And then you were there. You probably engineered that. So I found myself candidate for Secretary of State. No, that's not true.
Yeah.
That's not exactly how it happened.
We just didn't let you back off. Pretty close, I bet.
Once I said, well, if you wanted me to do it, I wouldn't say no. That was it.
What are you teaching?
I've been teaching political science, but I'm not doing that anymore because I'm now an investment advisor and stockbroker, and I make a lot more money that way than I would ever make teaching. Though my heart is in teaching.
It gives you a little more freedom to do something like this too.
Yes, it does. I'm self-employed. I set my own schedule. I don't have to answer to anyone but myself and my customers and clients. And it really helps in politics to be able to say, I've built a successful business. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Well, thank you all very much. My heart is warmed that you are all here, and I will try to be brief. I rarely succeed, but there are enough of my organizers and campaign committee people here who will start dropping hints that you'll all notice. Yeah. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I am 49 years old. I am married since 1980. My wife and I are trying to raise these 2 beautiful children here. The picture is about 7 years old, so, and for security purposes, I refuse to update it. Because they really are beautiful children. Anyway, I've built a business which is growing and continues to grow, and I believe in what I'm doing in that business, and I think that's the single biggest reason why it continues to grow. I served my nation, my country, in the armed forces and was honorably discharged. And I want my name to appear on a ballot this fall as Green Party candidate for Secretary of State in the state of Indiana. Now you would think, oh, cool, yeah. Well, Indiana is one of the 5 most restrictive states in the nation for ballot access. Basically, this sheet of paper is called the Indiana Petition of Nomination, CAN 19 we call it, candidate form number 19. And it has 10 lines on each form, which means at least 3,000 of these sheets of paper have to pass inspection, or more precisely, the printed name, the date of birth, the street address, no P.O. boxes please, and the city spelled out completely, and the zip code in that tiny little box, Michiana, tiny little box, have to be matched up to what's on the voter registration rolls in each county. And that examination has to be certified 30,000 times. Think about that for a minute. There's 92 counties in the state of Indiana. We're scattering these forms all across the state to have this done 30,000 times. If we succeed in getting those 30,000 signatures, and the deadline, of course, isn't when politics heat up in an off-year election. The deadline is at the end of June, long before anyone out there in the mass of the public is really paying a whole lot of attention. Right now, people are paying a little attention because of the primaries. But they put the deadline at the end of June. So this is where the rubber hits the road for the Indiana Green Party, this piece of paper. And we shouldn't have to get 30,000 signatures, but that brings me to the first point on this outline, election reform. I think we need to change that. We should not have to go out and get 30,000 signatures. Instead of 2% of the total number of votes cast in the last Secretary of State race, it should be maybe 1/2 of 1%. I don't think, I'm not opposed in principle to making people go out and demonstrate that there's enough interested individuals that before they can get their name on the ballot, but 30,000 signatures is way too high. And in fact, I'm told the reason what it came out of was that when the Citizens Party came and Barry Commoner ran for president, the people in the state legislature were upset that there were so many candidates on the ballot. I guess they thought it looked messy. So we need ballot access for third parties and for independents. And the biggest reason we need that is that there's so much that goes unsaid in our electoral process that needs to be said. You have to raise money. You have to have money. And if you can't raise money, you're not going to have a very competitive campaign. That needs to change. Money should not be a requirement for your access to the ballot. Because really, having the right to run for office is the flip side of the coin of having the right to vote. So we need easier ballot access so that people with no money can participate on the same footing with people with lots of money. How much money you have should make no difference. It should be the content of your character and the strength of your ideas and the strength of the political party you represent. That's what should determine your eligibility to run for public office. We need a paper ballot for every voter. And the next several points have to do with the fact that tens of millions of American voters have, for very, very good reason, turned their back on the process and walked away. And the reason they've turned their back on the process is because their vote, it's because in so many races today, they are powerless on election day. A choice between the Democrats and the Republicans is no choice at all. If you live in southwestern Indiana, and the majority of all your fellow citizens who have bothered to participate in the public comment process, which they've taken us through over and over and over again, have said, we don't want a new terrain Interstate 69. We do not want it. No, 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 no. Well, both political parties are cramming it down our throats. I-69 was on the agenda and aggressively promoted new terrain before Mich Daniels ever came on the scene. Mich Daniels came along and figured out how to pay for it by selling off your toll road up here. And there's some very, very powerful vested interests who are driving that agenda. They've invested hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in getting that new terrain toll road built, despite its impact on the environment, despite its failure to produce jobs, despite all of the Department of Transportation's own studies showing that it's a boondoggle. Well, if you're go to the polls and you want to vote because you're about to lose your home to eminent domain for this highway, what's your vote worth in a choice between Kiernan and Daniels? Absolutely nothing, because it doesn't matter which one you vote for, they're still going to cram that highway right down your throat. We need to change that. And the reason things have gotten to that point is that money has replaced voters on election day. And because money has replaced voters, not on election day, but in the electoral process. And because money has replaced voters in the electoral process, when you get to the polling place on election day, you're engaging in a ritual out of some sense of civic duty, rather than making a choice that will make any difference. So people don't trust the system anymore, with good reason, some of the reasons I've just laid out, and therefore they're demanding a paper ballot for every voter. Now, I think we can bring our electoral infrastructure up to 21st century standards. I'm not afraid of the use of computers in voting, but I don't trust the people that manufacture the voting machines and write the software code. So, why can't a voting machine spit out two identical certificates? After you cast your vote, you get your certificate, and you compare both certificates against what's on the screen. Yep, that's how I voted. Yep, that's how I voted. Yep, that's how I voted. You walk out and you give one copy to the clerk or his or her representative. You take the other one home. If there's ever a recount, there is no hanging chad. There is no question but who voted and how they voted. Simple enough. It doesn't take rocket science. It ought to be easier to vote. The fact that it's so hard to vote, and then when you do show up and vote, you're hit with this bewildering series of choices from township board all the way up to president. And how many people today have had the time to study those races and make an informed choice? None. The vast majority of Americans are overworked and underpaid, and their unions are getting killed. That's part of the larger agenda. Don't get me started. I'll try to stick to my topic. So we need to make it easier to vote, so you ought to be able to register when you walk in on election day. And you ought to be able to walk into any polling place in the state. You know, people commute to work for many miles, for hours at a time, every day in some cases. You know, it's a lot easier to stop at a polling place along the road and vote, rather than having to go to a particular place that's only open from 6:30 in the morning till 6:30 or 7 at night. And if your employer isn't at all understanding about your rights as an American citizen, and some are, and most aren't, you're just out of luck. Why shouldn't you be able to vote at any polling place in the state? They have a statewide voter registry in the election division now, and we have computers. Thousands of computers can log into that server simultaneously. 3 computers per polling place can simultaneously access that list. We have the technology, it's not hard, there's nothing advanced about this. If Joe Blow from 123 Main Street, anywhere USA, shows up and votes in Fort Wayne and then again in Evansville, oh, then we have a problem. A little red light pops up on the computer screen and we say, sir, you'll have to cast a provisional ballot. We're sorry, but someone else claiming to be you just voted. Or voted at 10 this morning. You know, how hard can it be? The fact is, it's not hard. We have the resources, but we're not serious. We're not committed to achieving real democracy. And real democracy requires making it easier to vote. Another way, expand the hours of the polls. Move the elections to a weekend, or require employers to give their employees a day off, one of the two. Have it run for 2 days. Why does it have to be 1 day?
That's a good point.
Campaign finance reform. We need to get money out of politics. The electoral politics are going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The only part the citizens are really welcome to participate in is on election day. Now you can show up at the Democratic Party headquarters and volunteer, and they'll be happy to put you to work. But they're not going to want to know the first thing about how you feel about their platform. Same with the Republicans. Not that way with the Greens. You show up, we'll put you to work, but we're also going to expect you to come to the Congress and help us revise and update and push forward our agenda by participating in the platform deliberation. We want to know what you think about the details of our platform. The other parties don't. Anyway, campaign finance reform would allow people to come back into the process because they wouldn't figure, oh, it's all rich people, it's all people with money. We can start with the Secretary of State race itself. The position is one that holds a sacred trust to certify, validate, legitimate the outcome of election. That's what the Secretary of State does. Now in Indiana, they also oversee the investment business and supervise the securities division that regulates that business. It's a business I'm in. And I can tell you, they probably couldn't regulate their way out of a box if they tried. They didn't send me a single letter until after, a week and a half after, I filed for Secretary of State. Then, oddly enough, an examiner in the securities division pointed out an error in my ad in the Yellow Pages. I asked her, I said, is there any relation between the fact that I just filed for Secretary of State? Oh, you did? No. As far as I know, there isn't, but it's really weird. Because I've never heard from the securities division in the state of Indiana. And I sell gas and oil drilling partnerships. I sell private placement shares in equal exchange coffee, and I sell mutual funds and stocks and bonds, and I sell my advice. I could be ripping people off blind, and they wouldn't know it. Sorry, I'm really getting upset.
Thank you for running for Secretary.
I want to know. You've heard of Elliott Spitzer in New York, the Attorney General? Progressive Asset Management, the firm that I represent, was the only nationwide group of brokers that actually sent him fan mail. Anyway, so we can start with the Office of Secretary of State. We can get money out of the election, starting with Secretary of State. Make it a strictly publicly funded election. No one runs as a Democrat, no one runs as a Green, no one runs as a Republican, no one runs as a Libertarian. No party money comes into the campaign, no business money, no private individual donations. It's all right out of taxpayers' dollars. And the basis of the campaign is what your vision of democracy is, how you would try to inspire people to participate in the electoral process, what your credentials are, and the effectiveness with which you present them to the voters. And that means nonpartisan. Bipartisan means exclude libertarians, Greens, socialists, communists, anarchists, whoever it may be. Bipartisan means exclude. Nonpartisan means no connection to the fact that there are two big parties entrenched in power. So, that brings me to the second part of my outline, corporate social responsibility. As an investment advisor and stockbroker, I specialize in socially responsible, environmentally screened investing. And that's why I believe in my work, and because we're trying to democratize corporations. You know, there's a lot of mindless corporation bashing that goes on. In the Green Party, mea culpa, yes, and it's very easy to target corporations and just say, the corporation. I went and filed papers to form a limited liability company, and I'm now a corporation, so, you know, you can bash me if you want to, but, you know, there are good corporations out there. I sell shares of their stock to my clients on the basis of my clients' concerns about that company's willingness to respect human rights standards internationally, that company's willingness to practice sound environmental stewardship in southern Indiana where they're hiring people to build things or whatever. I will sell people stocks based on those concerns. And it's a really exciting business to be in. What I've learned about corporations is that they are entrenched social institutions. They're not going anywhere anytime soon, no matter how mindlessly we bash them. And so we need to think about democratizing them. The Secretary of State presides over the Office of Business Services. That's where you go if you want to file a corporate charter in the state of Indiana. I don't see why we could not, along with encouraging other secretaries of state around the country to do the same thing, require that corporate charters contain widely recognized industry standard language of corporate social responsibility in the charters, along with widely recognized industry standard language of sound environmental stewardship in those charters. That the charters call for the representation of the workers on the board, the charters call for the representation of the community in which the company does business on the board, any other stakeholders with a valid claim on the board, and that where those responsible corporate charters are not lived up to, well, in theory, the people's government has the power to withdraw that charter and stop that company from doing business, right?
We used to do that.
They used to, and they should start, we should at least make corporations aware that if you're going to do business in the state of Indiana, you're going to do so according to certain standards of corporate social responsibility and environmental stewardship. Now, that may be a long way off, but if I win this election, they're certainly going to be hearing about it. You know, the legislature passes the laws that would make this possible, not the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is an executive administrative official. So we need responsible corporate charters, and especially we need accountability for layoffs and job exports. I mean, people are always complaining about the brain drain. But when corporations can come in and rake in hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes up to $100,000 per job created, more hundreds of thousands of dollars in value in the form of tax abatements, free infrastructure development in order to attract them in. When they come in because one municipality has been pitted against another municipality, one state against another state, in the competition to please bring these blessed demigods that create jobs for us into our community and not theirs. Well, there is a simmering scandal on the books of every major municipality in this country. Dig deep enough and you'll find companies that took the tax abatements and took the subsidies and never created the first job. Or took them and created the jobs, but they were dead-end, low-wage jobs with no benefits, or took them and created the jobs and then outsourced the jobs to India or Mexico, or just shut down the plant altogether because, oh, we can't compete. Well, if we're going to hold them accountable for doing that to a community, then they should expect to receive a bill for adjusted for inflation for every single subsidy and tax dollar that they saved. The dollar amount of the subsidies and the tax dollars, and they're going to be required to pay that bill upon pain of having it taken from their treasury by law enforcement. Not only want that, but they're also going to be required to sell that facility to the people that work there. And the state of Indiana will back up the loan, period, and the price will have to be reasonable. Now, that's a long way down the road, but why can't we talk about that? Why can't we have candidates on the ballot who will at least suggest that it is possible to democratize the economy somewhat, so that you don't have to check your rights at the door every time you show up at work? Well, we can't, because there is an entrenched elite class that's requiring us to get 30,000 registered voter signatures. So, given everything I've said, you may be wondering, well, why bother to vote if it's so difficult? I mean, why bother to run for office if it's so hard? If you're attacking the rules that you're being forced to play by, and you think the rules are illegitimate, and you think it makes it almost impossible, why are you doing it? The answer to that is very simple. This
I'm joking.
there you go. I am wrapping it up. I'm wrapping it up. I swear. Now I totally lost my train of thought.
Why would you vote?
Why would I run for office if everything I've said is true and it's so damn impossible and the situation is so if it's so corrupt? Well, because the tradition that the Green Party stands in dates back in North America to well before 1776. It is a tradition without which 1776 and the Revolutionary War of Independence might never have succeeded. It is a tradition that was laid to rest and they hoped killed off with the ratification of the Constitution that we live under today, which only grudgingly allowed the Bill of Rights to be amended, and which did not challenge states that required property requirements before you'd have the right to vote, which disenfranchised women and which disenfranchised slaves. Now you might say, oh, but that was 1780s. I mean, that doesn't apply now. Well, I don't know. Go ask the slaves. Go ask Nat Turner's followers when they rose up and asked them, was it okay for you to be enslaved then? Because moral standards were a little different then. Really, was it okay? No, it wasn't okay then. It's not okay now. There are standards of justice that transcend time. and place. We stand in the tradition of that struggle to realize equality, to realize freedom, to realize democracy. And that struggle is reviving in the context of the war in Iraq, in the context of the attack on civil rights, human rights, the attack on gays and lesbians, the attacks on women's right to control their own reproductive freedom, this endless series of rear guard battles that we have to fight to defend this patch of land or that community from environmental degradation. People are getting fed up, and people fought and died to participate in this process that I have just claimed has become corrupted. Women died for it. Young men went to Vietnam and got killed for it. We owe it to them, we owe it to the tradition that we stand in, to make a good faith effort no matter how hard these rules are. And having failed this time, we ought to try again if we fail. We may not fail. I have some progress to report if anyone wants to ask. We may actually get on the ballot. That's why I'm running, even though I claim that it's damn near impossible and the system is completely corrupted, because I believe in that tradition of the struggle for democracy. That's where democracy really lives. That's where freedom really lives. That's where equality really lives in America, is in the recurring outbreaks of that subterranean fire. They thought they put it out when they ratified the Constitution, and it broke out again, and Washington had to march the troops out to Pennsylvania to put down the Whiskey Rebellion. They thought they put it out, but then the abolitionists start marching in the street. They thought they put it out, and then women start demanding the vote. That is a subterranean fire that is the spirit of freedom, the spirit of equality. That's where democracy resides in America, not in checks and balances and separation of powers and single over House districts. Those are the ingenious designs of men who were terrified that the people might once and for all take control of their own destiny.
Talked about campaign finance reform and getting rid of the partisan aspect of elections, which I thought that was fantastic, and I'm totally in agreement with you about that. But how exactly will you do that when you are Secretary of State?
Well, I think there's something called civil partisanship, which isn't based on character assassination, which is based on sharp philosophical differences between candidates on the issues, which is healthy for democracy. I believe in strong political parties. And I think the one office that presides over the certification of who won the contest amongst the parties needs to be above the fray, so that we can begin to reinforce people's confidence in the process. But I do not believe in nonpartisan or even bipartisan elections. I believe in very, very partisan elections among many parties, at least more than two. This campaign will have succeeded if I lose the election, if it gets a ballot line for the Green Party. And then starting next year, people can start calling for constitutional amendments, calling for instant runoff voting, calling for some of these reforms here. I'm well aware that a lot of what I talk about is beyond the reach of the Secretary of State. But I'm also aware that this is a campaign about ballot access. This is a campaign about justice in our electoral system. And so it really opens the door for me to talk about all kinds of stuff that the Secretary of State, didn't have that much to do with. But it's going to require you to get on the ballot and run as a Green for Indiana State Senate or Indiana Legislature. And I mean you personally.
I know.
We're going to make all this trouble and then we can't find any candidates? Everybody here has got to at least be willing to let their name be used. Because if you do get a ballot line, it looks terrible if it says Green Party, no candidate, Green Party, no candidate, Green Party, no candidate. At least volunteer to let us use your name.
Sure. I'm volunteering Kathleen's name for governor.
Hey, that will have made this worth double the trouble we've been to so far.
And I'd just like to touch base about when I turned in the ballot access petition forms at the county courthouse, or the county city building, I turned in 20 signatures and 15 were validated. And
well, you get it in right there.
You get, yeah. I was able to wait, and just make sure when you have. I just can't emphasize enough to make sure that the signature doesn't need to be legible, but the person's name must be printed very legibly, and just check. Oh, I just want to make sure I can read that. Oh, is that a letter T or letter R? Please, because these women, they're very, very nice. They're lovely ladies, but. They all were wearing really, really powerful glasses. And if I hadn't been there, about two or three of the signatures would have been thrown out because I had to help them read it. So please, yeah.
Also, don't write INDPLS for Indianapolis. Don't write TH for Terre Haute. Don't let anybody put BLGTN for Bloomington, because SB for South Bend?
Oh, I did check that with them, they told me that SB was okay for South Bend, but I don't know what the rules are for everybody else's county.
But if
so-
somebody comes along and challenges it,
That's
then
true.
they can go back and change their mind and say, sorry, South Bend.
Even after
SB is
they've been
good.
certified?
Probably not.
Let's not.
50%,
Right,
Marion
there you
County
go.
Clerk's
I
Office
know.
rejected 50% of the signatures turned in for Ralph Nader in 2000.
If you would like to be on the email list for the St. Joe Valley Greens, if you'll put your name and email on this sheet of paper, I'll make sure to get it to Tom Brown, our computer guy, and get you on the email list. I'd like to turn it over, where's David? David left again.
David?
Now we're gonna turn it over to the fun part. Can I turn over the rest of the evening to you for the auction and the raffle? Maybe you can kind of explain how things are going to go?
Yeah, we're gonna sell some raffle tickets.
That was easy.
How much?
We're gonna sell some raffle tickets because they have a lot of items out there.
Okay.
And so that way everybody can participate and walk out of here with something and have fun.
All right.
And we'll sell, 10 for $5. And then we'll pick up an item and then we'll just draw a number. And then there's about 5 items out there that we'll auction off. Okay, so that's how it's gonna work, and we'll go around, and as many as you wanna buy on raffle tickets, then your number will be in. There's not a big group here, and, but there's some interesting items out there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
How's that? Is that a plan?
Great.
We're the professionals.
Okay, it'll work. Here, would you give 10? 7.5, somebody give 10, 10, would you give 10, would you go 10? 7.5, somebody give 10, 10, would you go 10? $10 here, would you give 12.5? You're out. Would you give 12.5? 10, would you give 12.5? Would you go 12.5? Would you give 15? 12.5, 15, would you get 17.5? 15, would you get 17.5? Would you get 17.5? They're going back south. Would you get 17.5? Would you get 17.5? Would you go 17.5? Would you get 20? You're out. You want the other one? 20, now 2.5. 20, would you give 2.5? You get the chicken fryer.
right.
I have 10, would you give 12.5? 10, would you give 12.5? Would you give 12.5? 10, would you give 12.5? Would you give 15? I have 5, would you give 7.5? 20, would you get 30? 30, would you get 30? 750, would you go 750? 5, would you give 7.5? Your last chance. 15, 17.5. 15, would you give 17.5? 15, would you give 17.5? Would you go 17.5? Now 20.
That's after you pay for a ring.
Let's go on south.